Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE PN Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jay Darren Gross. This is the podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today, my guest is Marc Pégulu. Marc is the Vice President of Internet of Things Product Marketing and Strategy for Semtech's Wireless and Sensing Products Group. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Marc about the IoT of things with commercial buildings and how low-raw sensors are being deployed to help builders, owners, and residents overcome some of the biggest challenges for smart applications with commercial buildings. But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CRE PN Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, and you can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Marc. Welcome to CRE PN Radio.
Hi, Darren. Thank you very much for having me with your podcast, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation as well. Before we get started, if you could share with the listeners just a little bit about your background.
Yes, well, my pleasure. So I'm an engineer by nature, so this is how, I came up like any engineers, quite interested in solving problems. My specialty has been wireless and sensing. From day one, I've been working in several companies in the semiconductor industry around sensors or connectivity. And with Semtech, we thought that there was a huge, I would say, opportunity to bring a new type of connectivity. It was back at the time in around 2015. People were starting to speak about this kind of world of Internet of Things, or IoT. And we said, well, we think that this type of market will require something new, something ultra low power, very low cost type of connectivity. And this is where we come with this technology named LoRa, which simply stands for long range. And then we worked very closely with the ecosystem to build an alliance called the LoRa Alliance to promote an open and free communication standard.
Now, I heard the low-raw is long range. The other thing you're talking about, the last part there, I didn't quite get that. What was that you were saying as far as
the low power? Probably the low power part is very, very important. So that's one of the key elements. And the other part is about having an open communication platform. So you need,
open. So an open platform.
It's like Wi-Fi, for instance. You want a protocol which is open so that anybody can work separately and have a level of interoperability.
No, that's definitely music to anybody who's tried to connect things and find that everybody's got their own platform and you've got different entry points and nothing can speak to each other. And
exactly. Yeah.
That's the point where sometimes I want to just undo the whole computer thing, because it's like, I thought this was supposed to be single entry input, just put it in one time and use it. But that's great. So let's talk a little bit about the Internet of Things in commercial real estate. What are some of the points that you have identified that can be controlled or measured or can integrate with the Internet of Things?
Yes. So the general purpose of Internet of Things is about collecting some data, process the data, and then act. So you build an intelligence based on objective set of data. You may compare them to certain profile of usage or an expected usage. And from this, you can make more intelligent decision, whether it's about alerting or it's about automating some operations in a building. So when it comes to commercial building, there are different types of applications which could be, in the category of having a reduction of the operating cost of the building. That's one key type of applications. And the second one would be, I would say, related to the wellness of occupancy, or in that case, for instance, in commercial building, wellness of employees, because there is a strong relationship between this notion of wellness and, of course, the motivation, and as a consequence, the efficiency of employees. So we try with the Internet of Things, indeed, to bring this kind of buzzword of technology to a simple way enough so that it makes sense for people. It makes sense for corporations. And this is really a key element of what we are doing together with the ecosystem. And of course, I would be happy to give some examples of a type of applications if you want.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you could identify some of the points that you're monitoring or that you're able to control.
Yes. So the typical examples would be, for instance, anything related to air quality. And it's especially important for indoor operations. So how do you determine air quality? In general, you measure different parameters such as temperature, humidity, but also some specific gas like CO2. And all of this, there are a lot of correlations between those different parameters and what you can call air quality. It has been seen again, during the last 2 years or so with all the consequences of pandemic with COVID, where it has been proven that you need to renew the air quite often. And the industry came to a realization that actually you didn't have enough sensors to properly make a determination as whether a specific room got the air renewed often enough. So now, if you have a very cheap way to deploy those sensors and collect regularly this data, you can bring the expected level, I would say, of feedback and safety for employees. So air quality is a big one. Then you have things like customer satisfactions, right? So which could be, for instance, about a feedback. You collect a feedback with a traditional red, green, yellow smiley face type of button. That's one. But it could be also when you go to the restrooms, you want to notify that something is not right, and you would like to call the cleanup company. So all this kind of information is just to make your time at the office or in a commercial building a little bit more pleasant. Also, when you came to a place, right, it's nice to know that you can park. If you are directed to the right place to park, that's even better. So this is what we call smart parking. And the smart parking is based on some proximity detection sensors, which basically, will give real-time the information as whether a place is occupied or not. And you could, before even entering the parking, get access to this information and be directed exactly to the right place. Maybe a last one, because there are a lot, would be related to anything which is related to building damage. So I take the example of our office actually at Semtech here in San Diego. We got a leak damage during the time of pandemic. So no people from Semtech in the building. And then we discover like a few weeks later that actually the tenant above us had a leak, and we had a whole floor kind of damage. And that's super expensive from an insurance point of view. Well, what if we had, and now we have, because we learned our lesson, what if we had some leak detection sensors everywhere in order to be alerted immediately and, to mitigate the risk and the cost for everyone?
Yeah, that last one you touched on, I'm very familiar with. Insurance companies are really kind of keying in on that, recognizing, I forget what they call them, water bugs or whatever, but there's a way to detect if there's water where it shouldn't be, and then to turn off the supply to minimize the damage. I was going to ask you, on the air quality one, is that something that has always been a point of measurement, or is that something that really kind of grew during the pandemic? Has that been something you guys have dealt with?
It grew significantly during the pandemic. I think temperature definitely and humidity have been constant measurement point, but the CO2 or other gas monitoring is new. It came up with, it was there a little bit before the pandemic, but the pandemic bring, I think, the real value, immediate value, I would say, to everyone, because it was short-term and high risk immediately. But we've seen that also in schools. For instance, we see a lot of schools now deploying those kind of CO2 sensors in order, to make sure that the kids are in a proper environment to learn. And I think people are starting now to integrate this type of information to their daily life, and how to best use. I think this is normal information everyone should have. We never paid attention to that before, but I think it's going to be more and more, I would say, in our way of thinking about how we should live, right?
Yeah, no, I get it, and it makes complete sense. It's kind of interesting, some of the I don't know, the data points that are being collected, and or the just the awareness of it, and even how the proper levels affect one's experience, and where you can feel more alive, awake, and you can affect one's just enjoyment of the situation or the space by having better air quality there, as opposed to perhaps they didn't even know they had poor air quality.
Yeah, I think people didn't know, and there is, I think we see a trend also in our cultures about as a citizen to be a little bit more empowered. And I think empowerment can be helped with knowledge. So if you're more aware of certain things, actually you feel a little bit more empowered, and you have a voice. Your voice matters. And I believe corporations are integrating this more and more. Everybody, we hear that all the time, right? The first asset of a company is its employees, and being able to deliver this clear message to the employee that the company you're working for is taking care of that for you. It gives a lot, right? And definitely we see a lot of an impact, a positive impact on motivation of employees.
Right. Now, I'm kind of curious, is the drive or the interest for these products, is it coming from the building owner? Is it coming from the control industry, meaning like if it's the HVAC industry or the construction industry, or is it coming from the tenant occupier expecting these things to be present?
I think that's a very good question. And what we think is that it comes more because it's related to the people and the occupants. It's more the tenant actually which is driving this kind of consideration. So maybe I can take the example of some companies like Capgemini, which is a pretty large consultant service company, is using our LoRa technology actually for their building. I believe they have about 400 buildings worldwide, pretty large superficie. And what's driving them is, for instance, optimizing the occupancy of the building. So it's both about making sure that there are not too many offices which are left unoccupied, but also making sure that if you need a meeting room, the meeting room is available when you need it, and there is no conflict. And they figured that at least on the first case about occupancy, they could save significant money, right? They have a yearly budget of 300 million euro, and what they can save is yearly 45 million. So it's a bit more than 10% kind of saving. So which is very significant for a small amount. In that case, it was a 6 million euro kind of investment to equip the building, and you get an immediate, I would say, payback on that. But this is a tenant, this is for themselves because they want to optimize their space. It drove, I would say, this aspiration to reduce the cost and implement IoT technologies. For others, when it's more related, I would say, to wellness or health safety, again, I think it's companies and tenants who are basically making certain level of promise and of safety promises to their employees, and they have to deliver. So they're working quite often with the owner of the building to make sure that the building is properly equipped as well to accommodate those kind of technologies.
No, and appreciate you going through that. Do you find that predominantly this is a commercial office space awareness application where the market is, or are you finding it in different asset classes as well?
We see a lot of traction in the commercial building right now. I mean, offices, definitely, but I would extend that also to factories. Factories has a tendency, and warehouses as well, have a tendency to include also some other considerations like safety. So we see, for instance, panic buttons type of things as well in association to the wellness or operational optimization of the building. So these are the primary segments that today we see.
Got it. You mentioned in the office, they're talking about like the conference room availability in that. It made me think just for a second, kind of the whole on the hospitality side of things with like the Airbnb and how they've, created all these entry exit things that are no touch opportunity, and you can schedule, you can go on a calendar and pick the address or the place you want to stay and put it on an electronic calendar, and you'll be in, and it will give you a code prior to entry. And as soon as you're out, then somebody else will come in and clean it for the next person. And I mean, it's all very low touch kind of thing. Given kind of the reset that COVID is, and I don't know that the ink is dried as far as writing the story on office space post COVID. I think that there's still kind of some sort of a hybrid that we're in right now. But pre-COVID, the shared workspace was a big thing, kind of the WeWork model. I would think that would your technology not even kind of offer for a shared workspace to really implement some controls there? Would that be? Am I thinking along the terms?
Yeah, you're thinking it right indeed, because you have, for instance, we see usage of the technology associated to some low resolution camera for people counting. So you can count how many people are getting in or out. So it's about presence detect in general, which is one of the key elements indeed to make viable a shared estate or shared building. I think anything which is indeed related to security system. So you mentioned the Airbnb. Obviously, there is a lock here. This is one of your key interface to enter the place you have rented. You need to make sure that indeed the place has been properly locked as well. So that's very convenient for the owner of the place actually to have those kind of monitoring information. Obviously the technology, internet exists as a technology in itself. And I would say independently of the sensing and the control mechanism, what you mentioned about delivering a new code, an entry code all the time to the user fits into that, right? It fits into this big picture. Where the technology comes into play, this type of IoT technology, well, it's between, at some point you need to communicate with your lock. This new information, and this is where wireless is it's the most common way actually to communicate between the lock itself and whichever intelligence deliver or select the new code to enter. So that's a good example that you gave actually. I would agree with you that we are a little bit still early in the phase of post-pandemic to properly understand how companies are going to manage shared workspace like WeWork and others. We do see that it seems actually that they took the time to properly reflect on how they should equip their building or their offices in order to anticipate a back to office in a safer way. What has been blocking so far a little bit the installation is just manpower. So it's just a simple thing to allow people to go to the office, to install devices, but the business case is definitely here. The desire and the budget are here. And we see now that as people are allowed to get back to office, so are the maintenance people capable of installing in a simple way those devices. And as a user, of course, you want that, right? You want that your building has been equipped with this kind of level of knowledge to make sure that you don't enter an overcrowded place. You want to know that the place, the office, the meeting room is free, right? When you get into that, and that indeed that the air quality has been renewed, and that's a safe place to come and maybe to bring your customers together with you.
So let me ask you this question, because this is the question I've always had with doing all these things on my phone or, however. And I get that the capability of all of it exists, and when it works great. What is the concern, or how do you compensate for the what if a network goes down, or there's a gap somewhere, or there's some sort of it could be a cyber thing. Is there an effort is there any redundancy built into these to where, you can avoid any kind of, downtime or non-operational time?
So yeah, I think you bring a few good points. So the first thing is, of course, we want to use as an interface what people are used, which is an interface with your smartphone. So all those technologies are compatible, because in the end, this is data processing and internet, and you are using this interface. This interface is also used for alerting quite often. So what happens, what could happen, right? The first thing is any kind of communication is extremely encrypted. So you want to make sure that there is no data privacy kind of concern. So that's the first element. Then most of the information which is communicated is a sensor information. So it gives you an additional information. It does not necessarily, for instance, lock you out of a building or something like that, but it gives you an additional information. Remember what we spoke about environmental information. Well, if you don't have this information, you may not be happy, but it doesn't prevent you, I would say, from using the premise. Same for leak detection or something. If it doesn't work, well, it means you may have some risk for a given time until this is repaired. But the good thing is that you are alerted that something doesn't work. So this you get it. And the reason why you get this information is, like you pointed, it's very easy to build a redundancy with this type of technology. So we started by saying, we are working on this technology of LoRa, which is long range, and this is really important. There are things you can and things you cannot do with short range technology. And building redundancy with short range technology is very complicated, because it means you need to install an infrastructure, a dense infrastructure, which is absolutely not compatible with economic concerns. With LoRa, actually, you are installing almost it's like a Wi-Fi hotspot, except that you get a super long range, something like 100 times longer range than Wi-Fi. And it enables you, with a few gateways in a building, to cover with redundancy every corner of the building. So even if a gateway goes down, that's fine. Actually, you will get another gateway. And interestingly, so let's imagine you lose, power into your building. Well, actually, your sensors, which are battery operated, could be received by what we call the LoRaWAN public network. So one of the elements which is really important for us is that we offer the possibility to our ecosystem to deploy a LoRa network as a private network like Wi-Fi in your building, but also as a public network. So you have companies like mobile network operators or cable network operators who are providing LoRaWAN technology from outdoor to indoor. So your device can be received also as an information, as an encrypted message by outdoor hotspot, outdoor gateways, which don't belong to your building, but you can subscribe to this service. My building is down. Okay, I want to know what's going on into my building. Okay, I can work, for instance, with a company like Comcast to get my LoRaWAN data, and understand what's going on, even if everything is shut down in my building. So this is really, really powerful in terms of redundancy.
Got it. So let me ask you, does this work better, or can you do it in both new construction versus like an existing building upgrade?
So you can do both. There is obviously no problem. I would say, does it make a big difference? In general, if you do it in a new building, you can plan for it in a slightly better way. But where we see the business, I would say, pulling us is actually in the retrofit, because there are quite a lot of buildings, who have not been designed actually for this kind of new technologies. They don't have, for instance, wires in order to connect sensors. And the only possibility is to install wireless battery-operated devices. They don't have power, they don't have a cable. So that's the only way. There is no alternative. So that's why we see quite, I would say, a vibrant demand in this type of retrofit, brownfield, if you want, in terms of building, because you are not going to deploy cable. It's just too expensive. You won't do that. Wireless is a very elegant way to get there. So both are possible, but it makes sense that the market looks at the retrofit first for wireless-based type of technology.
Got it. Given that this deals with some energy conservation, I would assume you kind of fit in some of the funding sources that are available. Do you find that building owners that are looking to utilize any of your products, is there funding available through any of these green initiatives that can help offset the cost?
Yes, so totally. Environment in general is one of the primary usage of IoT type of technologies, and energy is quite often a primary driver. I would say, quite often from an operational expenses perspective, but also more and more for environmental concern. More and more companies now, are working toward this kind of promise to be almost carbon neutral. And Semtech wants to obviously to encourage, and I think we fit very well with this notion of, we can help you deploy better intelligence in a much more granular way at a low cost with very, very low energy. A device, a battery-operated device for LoRa can work for 10 years without any problem. And that's really important because, not only you don't need to connect to the power and, overuse the energy, but also you don't have to replace the battery. So there is this waste management of a battery. Which means, it's not just about recycling the battery, but it's also about sending somebody to change all those batteries. Imagine, a building equipped with thousands of sensors. If you need to get someone, every couple of months to change all those batteries, that costs a lot, right? I mean, fuel to get there, that's just not workable. So that's why low power, long range goes together. Low cost, for infrastructure, low cost of maintenance is very important. And actually, it's so much low power that we see in a very near future that energy harvesting is going to take over and potentially replace a lot of the batteries. So energy harvesting is about using natural energy, which is environmental available energy, like light, for instance, in order to power your devices. And this is possible with this type of LoRa sensors. We see, for instance, that even I would say in a relatively dark office now, you can use a very efficient solar panel to power all the requirements you need in terms of sensing and communication for sensors. So really important. So, by giving this power of bringing sensors everywhere, you can control light, make sure that light is not left on. You can control the temperature to make sure, that AC is not operating while there is nobody in the building. All of that, it goes together. And, in the end, this is really what we are trying to bring as a contribution as well on our side. For a better environment, better social goals probably for the company, for all the world.
Is there any kind of a study you guys do, like a before after, and kind of an energy savings or some sort of a cost savings estimates that is part of the sales process for the building owner to, justify the numbers, or how
So
do you do it?
yeah, this is indeed something that our, I would say, technology users are doing. So Semtech, is a technology provider. We provide one piece, an important one, but not the only one, which is a connectivity. But our direct customers indeed have this kind of study about savings of energy in different buildings. I don't have one specific example right now, but I on top of my head, I see, a lot of water savings in the range of 30% saving. And same for this kind of electricity savings. So, this is the order of magnitude that we get quite often from our customers when they make the study. And you're right, this is important that they communicate in both terms to building owners or tenants, because nobody really cares so much about the technology itself. I think in the end they want to understand what's the impact of that. And so we prefer to let our ecosystem, who are, I would say, they're specialists about their domain. They speak about that, and we are more here on the technology. So probably they're in a better shape. But I would love indeed to share with you as a follow-up some detailed power savings analysis made by the ecosystem.
Got it. Well, no, I'm certain just thinking about it, when you say 30%, I would think that'd be pretty easy to obtain just based on controlling the temperature, when during times when nobody's there,
Yes.
or controlling the lights and stuff. So makes a lot of sense. Hey, Marc, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. As I mentioned earlier, by day I'm an insurance broker, and as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's 3 different strategies we typically try and consider to see if we can't mitigate the risk. The first we look to is to see if we can avoid the risk, and if that's not an option, then we look to see if there's a way we can minimize the risk. And when we are unable to avoid nor minimize the risk, we look to see if we can transfer the risk, and that's what an insurance policy is. It's a risk transfer vehicle. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can take a look at their own situation. Could be the technology, could be the marketplace, could be government, politics, interest rates, however you would like to frame the question and answer with respect to the biggest risk.
Yeah.
So if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Marc Pégulu, what is the biggest risk?
So, for what we talk about today, I would say for us, the biggest risk would be having, I would say, the wrong awareness, or a low awareness about the technology and what it can do. We think that we have really a unique and a huge opportunity in this LoRa technology. We are extremely happy to have the opportunity to speak with you, for example, because you are helping us, I would say, to make sense, to give a purpose to the technology itself. And this is the awareness I'm speaking about. Today, we are really, willing to make sure that we are not seen as just, a new technology, to always push the limit of the technology. We want to make sure that our customers and their customers understand that they have at hand now technologies capable of bringing a much more environmental friendly type of building and more social responsible type of building for their customers.
Oh, that sounds good. Marc, where can the listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
So I would really encourage them to connect either to the Semtech website or to some of our social media posting, which we do, for instance, on LinkedIn. Semtech is sharing quite often some information. I do share as well myself. And either way, I would be happy. They can contact me through Semtech or through directly through my LinkedIn profile. I would be happy, of course, to share anything, or answer any question that your audience would have.
Great. Marc, I cannot say thanks enough for taking the time to talk today. I've enjoyed it thoroughly and learned a lot, and hope we can do it again soon.
Thanks a lot, Darren. It was very inspiring for me also to put technology in the context of end users, and knowing your background as an insurance broker is definitely quite interesting for me.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE PN Radio.